Imagine for just a moment that you had no prior beliefs about religion. You know that one of the world's religions might be true, but you have no reason to believe that one is more likely than any other. Which religion do you think you would end up joining? Or perhaps you're starting your own religion. Presumably, you'd like as many people as possible to become followers. Would you ask your members to give away 10% of their income? Would you ban alcohol, require regular fasting, or insist that they spend years of their lives as missionaries? Probably not. If your goal is to attract as many members as possible, you might want to make joining as easy as possible. And yet, some of the world's fastest growing religions impose incredibly restrictive rules on their followers. Why is that? In this video, I'm going to argue that from an economic perspective, these rules may actually be one of the main reasons why these religions have been so successful. Let's start with 3 religions that place unusually high demands on their members: the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Seventh-day Adventism. Since 1950, reported membership in the Latter-day Saint Church has increased almost 16-fold. The number of active Jehovah's Witness publishers has increased roughly 27-fold, while Seventh-day Adventist membership has increased more than 30-fold. Over the same period, the world's population has grown by just over 3 times. We would normally expect an organisation to attract more people by making membership easier. These religions appear to have done the exact opposite. As you can see here, all 3 place significant demands on their members, requiring them to sacrifice considerable amounts of time, money, and freedom in their everyday lives. To see how this works in practice, let's focus on Mormonism. It provides a particularly clear example of the thought experiment from the beginning of the video. Of course, followers of Mormonism would not describe these rules as simply having been chosen by the religion's founder. They believe that many of these teachings and commandments were revealed by God. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to ask you to temporarily suspend that theological question and focus instead on the economic effects these rules have once they're in place. The Mormon Church, officially called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was founded in upstate New York in 1830 by Joseph Smith and began with just a handful of followers. Less than 2 centuries later, it has grown into a global church with millions of members and congregations in well over 100 countries. This massive growth occurred despite the relatively strict restrictions placed on Mormons. Members are generally expected to tithe 10% of their income. They abstain from alcohol, tobacco, recreational drugs, as well as tea and coffee. Young adults are encouraged to spend up to 2 years as full-time missionaries. Regular church attendance is expected, along with volunteer service within the congregation. None of these requirements are legally enforced, of course, but for committed members, they are taken incredibly seriously. As you can see, these rules represent a significant investment of time, money, and effort. So why would anyone accept these costs? The secular or economic part of the answer is that membership also comes with earthly benefits. Mormon congregations are famous for their strong sense of community. Members often help one another move house, find employment, care for children, or provide meals during difficult periods. If someone loses their job or falls on hard times, the church's formal welfare system and informal support networks can provide food, clothing, employment assistance, and other forms of short-term support. Membership also brings friendships, social events, and business connections, forming a community that many members describe as feeling like an extended family. This community and sense of belonging is something that humans naturally crave. So returning to the situation from the beginning of the video, where you were deciding what religion to join, benefits like these might make Mormonism sound very attractive, whether or not you genuinely believe in its religious claims. But herein lies the problem. If these benefits are available to every member, what stops someone from enjoying all of them without contributing anything in return? Economists have a name for this problem. It's called the free rider problem. The free rider problem occurs whenever people can enjoy the benefits of something without contributing to the cost of providing it. Economists classify goods according to 2 simple questions. First, can people be excluded from using it? Second, does one person's use reduce how much is left for everyone else? For public goods, the answer to both of these questions is no. Once a public good exists, it's extremely difficult to stop people from benefiting from it, and one person's use doesn't reduce anyone else's. Take national defence for example. Suppose I decide to stop paying my taxes this year. Does the government respond by allowing another country to invade my home? Of course not. National defence works like an umbrella. Once it's there, everyone underneath receives its protection, whether or not they've helped to pay for it. Wikipedia is another example. Millions of people use it every day, but only a tiny fraction ever edit an article or donate money. Once an article has been written, my reading of it doesn't stop you from reading it too, and nobody is excluded from reading it. As a result, millions of us are effectively free riders. Religion, however, isn't really a public good. The benefits of belonging to the Mormon Church aren't available to everyone. They're mostly available to members, with some caveats. That makes them something that economists call a club good. Club goods are excludable, but largely non-rivalrous. If another committed member joins the congregation, that doesn't necessarily reduce the friendships, support, or sense of community available to everyone else. In fact, it could even make it stronger. But that still leaves us with a problem. Even inside this club, every member has an incentive to let everyone else donate, volunteer, and make sacrifices, while they simply enjoy the benefits. So why doesn't that happen? In 1994, economist Laurence Iannaccone published what has since become one of the most influential papers in the field of the economics of religion. His central argument was that the strict rules that appear from the outside to make a religion less attractive are often what ensure the religion is in fact a successful institution. According to Iannaccone, these costly rules solve the free rider problem in two different ways. The first is what he calls screening. Imagine two people are thinking about joining the Mormon Church. One genuinely wants to become part of the community. The other is mostly interested in the benefits. They like the welfare programs, the friendships, and the support network, but they have no real intention of contributing much themselves. Now suppose joining the church requires donating 10% of your income, avoiding alcohol and coffee, and all the other rules that Mormons adhere to. These rules and expectations make it much more difficult to free ride. Therefore, the people who are only interested in taking are less likely to join in the first place. The second factor is what Iannaccone describes as strictness. Think about someone who gives up drinking, volunteers every weekend, and spends most of their free time with other members of the church. By making outside activities more costly, those same sacrifices naturally make participation inside the church more attractive. Time that might have otherwise been spent elsewhere, such as in a bar, is redirected back into the religious community. The result is a congregation where members attend more often, volunteer more, contribute more, and develop stronger relationships with one another. The value of belonging to the church increases because everyone is investing more into it. So that's the theory, but does it actually match what we observe in the real world? Well, using survey data from Christian denominations in the United States, Iannaccone compared more liberal churches with stricter denominations such as the Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, and Jehovah's Witnesses. He found that members of stricter churches attended service more frequently, donated a larger share of their income, participated more in church-related activities, identified more strongly with their religion, and were less involved in competing secular organizations. The same broad patterns also appeared when he examined Jewish denominations, comparing Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox Judaism. In other words, the evidence was consistent with the theory. The churches that asked the most of their members also tended to have members who gave the most back. But there are two important problems with that evidence. First, this evidence cannot tell us whether strict rules make people more committed, or whether unusually committed people simply choose stricter religions. In an earlier study, sociologists Daniel Olson and Paul Pearl compared individual congregations within the same denomination. They found that while stricter denominations tended to have more committed members, stricter congregations within the same denomination did not appear to have noticeably higher levels of commitment than less strict congregations. This suggests that much of the relationship between strictness and commitment exists at the denominational level, rather than arising from differences between individual congregations. This does not necessarily invalidate Iannaccone's theory, but it does suggest that strictness alone may not fully explain this pattern. Religious denominations also differ in their theology, history, and culture, and some of these differences may contribute to the higher levels of participation observed in stricter denominations. Second, strictness reduces free riding, but doesn't eliminate it. In 2005, Olson and Pearl re-examined the evidence on strict churches. They found that even within the strictest congregations, some members contributed far less than others, enjoying the benefits of membership while doing the minimum required to remain in good standing. Some researchers refer to this as cheap riding rather than free riding. These members are not getting something for nothing, but they are still contributing less than their fair share. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider supporting the channel by liking and subscribing. Given that strictness reduces free riding without eliminating it, we might wonder why religions do not simply continue imposing stricter and stricter rules. So far, we've focused on the benefits of strictness. However, as well as discouraging free riders, every new rule discourages some genuinely committed people who simply aren't willing to accept that particular sacrifice. In other words, more strictness isn't always better. There is an optimal level of strictness. A religion that asks too little risks becoming filled with free riders. A religion that asks too much risks driving away the very people it hopes to attract. In fact, Iannaccone argues that religious groups must continually adjust that balance as society changes around them. The Amish provide a perfect example of this. From the outside, it's easy to imagine the Amish as refusing every aspect of modern life, but in reality, they've repeatedly adapted their rules over time. In some Amish communities, tractors are allowed around the barn, but not in the fields. Telephones may be permitted in workshops, but not inside homes. Modern farm equipment is often allowed, provided it's drawn by horses rather than powered by electricity. These compromises allow the Amish to preserve a distinctive identity while adapting to changing economic realities. Iannaccone points to them as an example of a group trying to maintain what he calls an optimal gap between itself and wider society. This idea may help explain why religions from around the world look so different from one another. Every religion operates in a different social environment, faces different competition, and appeals to different kinds of people. The level of strictness that works for an Amish community in rural Pennsylvania may be completely different from the level that works for a church in central London. In other words, religions are trying to find the level of strictness that maximizes the strength of their community. Although we have focused on religious institutions in this video, this mechanism can be seen in a variety of settings. Many organizations face exactly the same problem. They provide a valuable benefit to their members, but those benefits only exist if enough people are willing to contribute, work hard, and make sacrifices. As a result, many organizations deliberately impose costs on their membership in order to encourage commitment and discourage free riding. Military special forces provide an obvious example. Of course, first and foremost, their demanding selection courses ensure that recruits possess the physical fitness and mental toughness required for the job. But these courses also serve another purpose. Extreme physical exhaustion, sleep deprivation, and a high probability of failure screen out people who lack the commitment required to complete the training. The difficulty of selection therefore does not simply screen for fitness, but also ensures that those who make it through are willing to contribute to the group and can be relied upon when doing so becomes exceptionally difficult. Initiation rituals have historically served a similar function in many clubs, fraternities, and voluntary organizations. To be clear, I am not condoning hazing. It is generally harmful and rightly criticized. But in the context of what we have discussed, one could argue that initiation rituals more generally can act as a screening device, requiring prospective members to demonstrate commitment before receiving the benefits of membership. In both of these examples, the costs imposed on members represent a way of solving the same economic problem that religions face, which is encouraging people to contribute to a community while discouraging those who simply wish to benefit from the contributions of others. Therefore, one could argue that Iannaccone's theory is more general than a theory of religion. It is a theory of how organizations can use costly commitment to build stronger, more cooperative communities. Economics cannot tell us whether any religion is true. What it can explain is why costly religious institutions can survive and grow. Tithing, fasting, and missionary work may look like barriers to membership, but by discouraging free riding and directing members' time back into the community, they can help create the very benefits that make membership valuable. Sometimes the rules that appear most likely to weaken an organization are the ones that ensure its strength. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, this is the first episode in my series on the economics of religion. If the next episode is already available, it should be on screen now. If not, you might enjoy this video about how AI could cause a knowledge collapse. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time on Econ Unpacked.